Welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahara Zabor, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Iris Serbanescu. She has a decade of experience supporting owner-operated businesses in the luxury, adventure, and tech sectors. Having visited 45 countries, she's an adventure travel enthusiast and champion for gender equality in the tourism industry. A proud founder of wmnsWORK, the tourism industry's first global virtual business accelerator for women and non-binary early stage entrepreneurs. Iris is also the founder of B2B sales agency by Iris, established to help experiential tour operators and hotels develop meaningful industry partnerships. Iris was MC of Global International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association Conference in Toronto in 2018, was nominated for PAX News Personality of the Year Award in 2019, and was also a founding board member of Young Travel Professionals Toronto. Iris, welcome and thank you so much for joining us on the TCN podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped to be here and chat with you about all things travel.
Oh, I love all your accolades there. We're going to have to dive in some of those. But first, before we do that, can you share with the audience, tell us, where did your love of travel stem from?
Yes, of course. So I started traveling when I was 3 months old. It's been a long love affair with travel. I immigrated from Israel, which is where I was born. At the ripe age of 3 months, my parents took me on my first transatlantic flight, and they said that I was I was a total problem child up until that moment when they got me on that plane. And I was so great. I didn't cry. I didn't fuss. I think the journey was like 12 hours. And ever since then, we immigrated to Canada. And ever since I was a kid, from that moment on, my parents would take us traveling every summer to Florida, which doesn't sound like the most exotic place, but when you're a child coming from Canada and going to Florida in the winter, it was pretty great. So I've always been really interested and really into journeys and being on the move and traveling. Like, as I mentioned, that was really instilled in me from a young age, because we would take road trips down south as a family. And then when I got a little bit older, we started traveling to Europe. And when I was 16, I got to spend a summer by myself, my first solo trip in Italy studying. I think I took history and civil studies for my grade 12 English credit, or my grade 12 high school credit. It was through a study abroad program. And that really opened my eyes just to the level of like transformation of self and independence that travel had in store for me. Like you mentioned, or like you stand by the values in the Travel Coach Network of like traveling for transformation and traveling for a purpose. It was really evident for me at that young age how much travel transformed me. Like it built my character. It put me in uncomfortable situations. It really helped me grow and thrive in a way that studying in school or even extracurriculars or anything like that just couldn't do. And then as I got older, my love for travel did not wane. I ended up spending a semester abroad in Paris and studying, doing my 4th semester of university or college in Paris, France. And I was actually going through a really rough time personally at that period in my life. We'd had a significant loss in the family. And I was also going through my own internal struggles. I was actually coming to the realization that I was part of the LGBTQ community. So I was coming out as gay to myself. And that was a really pivotal time for me, of course, a period of just, not knowing who I was, my identity. I found it to be quite difficult to navigate on my own. And when I was living abroad, I was able to kind of put on this, not persona, but just be myself more than anything else. I was able to really let myself be me and that's how I really transformed at that time period in my 20s. I was just completely I didn't have to be a certain way, the way I was back home. I could just be who I was. I could go on adventures. I could meet new people. And it opened up this portal in my mind of what was possible. And ever since then, I've been completely addicted to travel. I turned it into a career shortly after. So that tells you how much of an impact it had on my life.
Yeah, I love that. I hear that often from members of the Travel Coach Network when I ask them, like, what does travel do for them? And I hear a lot the answers of they get a sense of freedom. And I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? And then they'll say, well, it's a chance for me to feel, how I want to feel and be how I want to be without any pressures from family or society or my community or wherever it is I'm from, my hometown. Or it's an opportunity to dive into a location where there's new people who don't judge you because they don't know you yet. And, this internal sense of freedom. I always encourage people to dig deeper on what do these terms mean and what does travel really mean to you on a below the surface level of just wanting to get away and meet new people. Like, where's that why come from? So I love hearing that. Is there a place that you visited that made a really big impact on you?
So funny that you say that. On that trip specifically, yes, it was Barcelona, and I'm speaking to you now from Barcelona. I've just relocated here for a year. So this is a really big full circle moment for me. But later on in my 20s, actually, one of the places I went that impacted me and changed my worldview in such a big way was India.
Mm.
It was just so obviously different from the life I was used to. I would say traveling Europe in your 20s, it's more of a sheltered type of travel experience, but going to India and immersing yourself in their way of life and their values. And I was there for 3 weeks, but it was like very intense. And it was just so eye-opening to the way other people live, and lots of culture shock, definitely. But it made me realize how grateful I am for the life that I get to live in North America, and how much I wanted to learn about these folks, how their values and worldviews were crafted from the way that they grew up in India. Like, it's just so different. I could go into detail on this, but I'm not going to, because I'm sure you've been to India. It's just like, there's so much to talk about. It's an incredible country, but it's just so different. And I think that really shifted my perception of life.
That's actually funny that you say that, because last week, I think it was, I did a post on India, and I shared a picture of when I was taking an overnight train from Delhi to Bangalore, and I talked about how transformative of my time in India was. So that's funny that you brought that up. It is. It's there's a lot of words to go into how India can make you feel and stuff. But I want to hear more about. So you had this innate sense of adventure since you've been young. And then where did you start in the tourism industry? What did you start doing that, took your passions into what you do now?
Good question. So I actually graduated college and started onto a career path that was very different from tourism. I worked in corporate risk management insurance, and I had a business degree, and it was just like, it was what you did. It was like, you graduated, you got a good job downtown Toronto on Bay Street, which is like the Canadian equivalent of Wall Street. And shortly after, I think 6 months in, I realized, like, this is not for me. I can't picture myself here for the next 50 years. And I started to just get really curious about everything. And at that point, I didn't know that travel was even a possibility as a career for me. Like, no one really talked about it as an industry. I think you had a similar journey too, where you were like, there are no options in the travel industry for me to work. So what do I do if I want to be involved in this industry? Like, we just don't really get to know, we don't get to hear a lot about what's out there. So I took it upon myself and just got like really curious and did a lot of reading. And did the internet exist back then? Yes, it did. I'm like Googling.
We're
about
not dinosaurs.
I know. It's true. So like reading and Googling and research basically on like what I could do in the travel industry. And I came upon the Four Seasons hotel chain that had been started in Toronto, in my hometown. Isidore Sharp was from Toronto, and I read his book and I was like, oh my God, I want to work at the Four Seasons. This is going to be my thing. So I decided to go and get a job at the Four Seasons in Prague, actually in the Czech Republic in Europe for a summer, and did an internship there and really loved it, but ultimately realized like, I think I need to be working in a field with smaller businesses. So not necessarily a larger hotel chain. I wanted to have an impact on a more grassroots level. So I came home from that internship and decided to get some experience working at a luxury travel agency. And from there, I started working with smaller businesses, like the suppliers that would come in and do presentations to our agents. And they were from all over the world, Central America, Southeast Asia. I was learning a lot about these tour operators. A lot of them were the owners, the ones who came in, and they were talking to us about their experiences and their products. And that really solidified my desire to work with small businesses, just seeing their passion and their knowledge. And yeah, it was really cool. So I ended up leaving that job and working for a small tourism consultancy in Toronto that worked entirely with small businesses in the industry, mostly adventure focused, and started doing their business to business sales and marketing, and got to travel all over the world to these destinations and support them on the ground with consulting and advice and how to market to the North American market, because that's a really big outbound market for a lot of places. And so I would kind of help them with their products and with their tours, and then I would promote them back in North America to the travel trade, so to travel agents and to tour operators. And seeing how much their businesses grew during that time was really amazing, and it made me realize the power of partnerships with companies that you trust. Like, trust is everything, and that is what makes all the difference in these types of partnerships. So I spent about 5 years doing that and learning those lessons. And then I worked in travel tech for about 3 years at Tour Radar. They're the world's largest online marketplace for multi-day tour packages and adventures, and worked through the whole pandemic at Tour Radar, and then decided to start my own company. And that's how wmensWORK was born.
What about By Iris? When did you start that?
Oh, interesting. At the exact same time, actually. I decided to start 2 companies at the same time, which I would not recommend.
I swear we're the same people. I run the Travel Coach Network and my consultancy as well. So it's so funny. So tell us about By Iris. What do you do with that one?
Yeah, so I help sustainably focused tour operators and boutique hotels all over the world grow their business to business partnerships. So I basically am their like North American representative, and I help make connections to travel agents, travel advisors, tour operators, travel coaches, to sell those products in those destinations. So that's the main service that By Iris provides. And then I do a little bit of consulting on top of that, and communications to the travel trade and that kind of thing. But my work has been like very predominantly focused on B2B. I just love the idea of creating partnerships between organizations that have really shared values. It's like, it makes me super happy.
Oh, I love
So that's
that.
the story of By Iris.
And then tell us more about wmensWORK, because that's how we got connected. One of our TCN team members, Claire, who works for our partnerships here at the TCN, connected us, and that's how you and I got to meet, and I got to learn more about what you're doing. And I really resonated with your wmensWORK and your cohorts, just because obviously as a woman in tourism and hospitality, and someone who's been very much involved in the industry, starting from when I got my degree in it to connecting with all of these big companies and going to all these different trade shows and conferences and being very well integrated. I see where women stand in the industry and the struggles we still have, and the progress that still needs to be done and everything too. So share us what inspired women's work and what exactly it is.
Yeah, for sure. So Women's Work is a 12-week accelerator program designed for women and non-binary entrepreneurs who are just getting started, or they're in their first year of business and they want to launch a tourism business. So we're open to tour operators, local DMCs / tour operators, boutique hotels, and tech companies. We kind of run the gamut. And the idea of Women's Work was to create this ecosystem of support and access to industry experts and education and mentorship, as well as community support, which, running the Travel Coach Network, how important community is. It's almost everything. It's really, really hard to do things on your own. It can totally be done, but it's so much easier. It accelerates your growth when you have a community of people behind you. So I started it based on the fact that these statistics of gender equality in the industry were really grim. Like 55% of the industry workforce is made up of women, but less than 8% are actually holding executive positions or board positions. That means that 92% of the money and power in the industry lie with men. But we make up the majority of the workforce. So there's this big disparity between, who's doing the work and who's actually directing the resources of the industry. And when I found out, I observed it firsthand from my own experience in the industry for so long. When I worked at that tourism consultancy that I mentioned, I was there for 5 years. And I think in 5 years, we had one female client. The rest of our clients were men, male-owned businesses. And I just noticed, why aren't more women starting businesses? What's holding us back? What's the deal here? I want to be part of this solution. So, so I did a little bit of research. An interesting report to read is the UNWTO second report on women in tourism. I can share the link after with everybody, but it really dives deep into the issues of gender equality in the industry. And it also points out that women can succeed, but they're held back by limited access to resources, so funding and education. And at the moment, Women's Work doesn't help so much on the funding side, outside of the scholarships that we provide to those that identify as racialized, LGBTQ+ or disabled. But we are supporting on the education front and the network front, because that's an area that I've spent 10 years, building up. So what I do through the program is bring in experts, 10 to 12 different subject matter experts, to teach workshops on different areas that are important to a new business, like financials 101, business model planning, telling your story, mindset, all of these things that are, you don't realize, kind of like you don't know. Once you actually get the knowledge and the understanding of these things, they actually catapults your business forward in a big way, but you may not know that that's what you need. So I created this program based on what I've seen for the past 10 years working with small businesses, the barriers that hold them back, and the kinds of education that they'd be looking for, and pulled it together into a 12-week accelerator. And it's virtual. So most accelerators, like if you think of the word traditionally in the tech industry, they're location specific. So they'll have like a Silicon Valley accelerator for people in that area who are starting tech businesses. But it was really important to me to make Women's Work accessible to all and very global. So we actually have like 7 different countries represented in our last cohort from all over the world. And that was really cool. The whole idea is to flatten the learning curve of the industry of entrepreneurship as well, and to create the kind of network that's going to continue to bring dividends to you as an entrepreneur for the rest of your career, like the connections you make with the experts and the mentors, as well as the other women in the program.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we align in a lot of that too, where I find so much value. People always ask me, like, how did I grow my businesses as quickly as I have in about 4.5 years? And one of the things is, I would say, networking and mentorship. It's so essential. It's always really important to learn from those who either have done it before or something similar and, learned and failed, or, you can, I always like to just find my pain points and find someone who can relate to those pain points, who has, the experience behind it or the background behind it to help give you a different perspective on it. Because as an entrepreneur, which isn't for everyone, there's so many different challenges and so many different things, especially as women ourselves. There's so much that we already have in our lives to do, and so much on our shoulders, responsibilities and our families and finances and home and taking care of others. And whether you have children or a partner, or if you are in a workplace, others may come to you. We're just naturally caring, and we tend to put ourselves on the back burner and our own goals and everything. And I think that a community where there's the support like that and mentorship can really help women put in focus their goals, so that there's no longer this, this inequality in the industry, which there's so much more that needs to happen in this industry when it comes to women. I, like you said, I see the majority of a lot of these companies, whether they're hotel chains or airlines or travel tech companies, the majority of them are men, older men in the industry. And as we know, as women, who, especially those who are passionate about travel, we have the heart and the creativity to bring this to this industry, which is what the industry needs: creativity and a more human-centric, holistic approach. So I hope that anyone listening to this podcast, if you're a woman or you identify or non-binary, think outside the box and do know that you can create whatever it is that you have inside of you that you're hoping to create.
Yes, I love that. That's so true, because we often stop ourselves before we even get started, because we have all of these preconceived notions about how we're not this and we're not that. And we don't have the knowledge, and we don't have this, or we're just not that kind of person. So we're not going to start our businesses. But I think that that's internalized from society and what we see in the industry, because we only see, the majority of people we see are men in these positions. So of course we think that we can't do it ourselves. So that's the paradigm that I want to shift with women's work, is that don't sell yourself short. Don't quit before you've started. Give yourself a chance. Women's work is created as the first step for you when you want to launch a business. We had women who were just in the ideation phase when they joined women's work, and they were like, I have so much more confidence now to actually start my business than I did 3 months ago, because I've learned so much, and I know that I can do it. And confidence is the most invaluable tool that we can have for ourselves, because it allows us to accomplish so much more. You can have all the education in the world, but if you don't have the confidence to actually take action, it's going to be really difficult. So that's what we're here to help with. And to answer your question a bit deeper from before about why I started women's work, and bring it back to this, I wanted to start my own business when I was full-time employed, and I didn't know that women's work was going to be the business I was going to start. And I was looking for programs or systems or communities where they were focused on women who wanted to start new companies in tourism, and I just didn't find any. And I was like, okay, well, I think this is the business I have to start then. That's kind of how women's work was born, because I was in need of this community. So I created it. And it just was, it was an interesting kind of full circle thing.
Yeah. And I think that's where we aligned as well too. Whereas I started the Travel Coach Network and Certification Program because it's what I was looking for when I was an aimless backpacker, being like, there must be more in this industry if I have all this knowledge and background and ideas and insight and everything. So something I hear a lot from women I know working with those in the Travel Coach Network, when it comes to their limiting beliefs about what they can do and what they can create in their business. and maybe those listening, this is something that has gone through your head, is that level of credibility. I always hear this. Well, I hear things like, do I need a certain degree, or do I need certain amount of years of experience for someone to take me seriously? Would anyone want to buy this? Would anyone would a company listen to me if I want to pitch them something? Or it's that doubt that's in their mind of their own credibility. And they feel like they have to do so much more in order to be worthy to be heard, or worthy to be creative, or worthy to, share their voice and share their ideas. And that's so wrong. And I want everyone to know that you putting your own story, your own ideas, your truth out there, that's the very beginning of creating something great and creating something authentic. And that's something that I'm sure that you guys work through those limiting beliefs and that mindset in the program too, because that's key. You can create the greatest products and services and everything, but if you don't have the right mindset around it and that confidence like you're talking about, it's just going to sit there. But Iris, as we wrap it up here, I want to first see, is there anything that we haven't talked about today? Anything you want to share with our audience?
Oh, good question. No, I think I just want to echo what you've said about limiting beliefs, and that the credibility story is a story that has been sold to us time and time again as women. Like, I don't know where it came from. It's probably a systemic thing, and it's part of kind of the stuff that we've been ingesting through our environment. But in actual practicality, what really helped me and what shifted it for me when thinking about, I'm like, I've never led a group program before. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Like all this stuff, like I don't have a certification. What really helped me shift that was realizing that people actually are much more emotional than they are rational when it comes to a purchasing decision. And they want to buy from somebody that they like, that they trust, and that maybe has similar lived experience to them. People will choose that over certification forever, in my opinion, and in my experience personally. Yeah. So that's just a nugget I want to leave you with there.
Yeah, no, I love that you say that, because I say the same exact thing. Like people, especially in the tourism industry, if you run a travel business, travel is emotional, travel is personal. So I always say, I've done many episodes and posts on this, but we don't sell travel. People don't buy travel. They buy the emotion, the transformation behind it. So that relays also into anything that you're selling and putting out there. It's that emotion behind it. And that's why your own personal story is the best place to start with, what you're doing in your business and talking about what you're creating and everything. And where can people learn more about you? Where can they learn more about your women's work and follow you?
Yeah, so they can check out the website, www.wmnsWORK.com. The link to my LinkedIn and Instagram are at the bottom of that webpage as well. But if you're already holding your phone and you're on Instagram, the handle is We Are Women's Work.
Perfect. And of course, we're going to put all of those links in our show notes. And Iris, the last question, and one of my favorite questions, what's a fun fact about yourself? Doesn't have to be business or travel related.
Fun fact is that I used to be a ballet dancer for 10 years, and I was super dedicated to it, only to realize when I was like 15, they told me I was too tall to ever be a professional ballet dancer because I'm 6'1". So talk about discrimination. Apparently the men can't lift you up and you can't be taller than them on point. So you have to be under a certain height. And I was like, oh, I'm 15. I've like dedicated like the past like 8 years to this. And I wanted to become a professional dancer, but I pivoted, I switched gears. It worked out really well. But I love telling that story because it is really funny.
That's funny. I'm 6 foot, so you have me beat there by an inch.
No way.
Yeah.
We've only been meeting over Zoom. That's so funny. You have no idea.
When people finally meet me in person, or I'm at a conference or an event or something, they're like, I didn't realize you're so tall. I just tower over everyone. Wonderful. Well, Iris, I want to say thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for what's to come for you and your new home in Barcelona. And we're gonna have to definitely do a TCN meetup in Barcelona sometime. So that would be incredible. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sahara. It was so nice to chat with you, and thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And everyone, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Visit us at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. Come give us a hello, especially in our TCN Global community on Facebook. The link for that and your free beginner's guide is in the show notes, as well as all of Iris's links today. You can also, if you know anyone who might be interested in travel coaching, please do send them our way to our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.